UEMOA, hosted by the West African Monetary Institute in Accra, Ghana. Virtual summit. President Buhari was part of that summit. He sent out some tweets. I think most of us saw the tweets yesterday, where he was expressing some concern with the UEMOA countries. That's the zone, wanting to take up the echo. We've been talking about the echo, replicating what the Eurozone has. So, a number of nations would be using a single currency. It will facilitate trade and transactions between the countries. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is supposed to be, to complement that, or rather, the ECHO is supposed to complement the AFCFTA. So essentially, the UEMOA countries, which are Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo. These are all former French colonies, and they moved to adopt the ECHO. But this is where it gets a little confusing. So they use the CFA franc, right, which is pegged to the euro. And I believe it was about a month ago where France's Council of Ministers passed a bill that ratified a reform of the monetary agreements that bound the French government to those 8 UEMOA member states. So they are giving them a little bit of freedom. And I think what's supposed to happen here is that they're now abandoning the CFA franc. They're just changing the name. So they're still, those countries I just mentioned, they of course all use the CFA franc, and the CFA franc is pegged to the euro, which gives them stability and allows them to avoid all these foreign exchange shocks that other African nations like ourselves and other countries face. So, what was confusing was I thought, they're going to abandon the CFA franc and they're all going to be parts of the ECHO. But it seems like it's just a name change, right? They're still the what the states have agreed to do. These UEMOA states, is they are just going to change the name to ECHO. So they're like, okay, but it's still going to be pegged to the euro. So President Buhari now, and if you read these tweets, I don't think he wrote these tweets. I think somebody else wrote the tweets. But let me read President Buhari's tweets. And I hope everybody's following President Buhari. I hope you're following Vice President Osibanjo. I hope you're following all our federal government folks, because it's important to keep up to date with what's going on. Anyway, he says it gives me. Oh, okay, by the way, if you're not following President Buhari, it's M. Buhari. I mean, everybody should know this. Anyway, let me read the tweets. It gives me an uneasy feeling that the UEMOA zone wishes to take up the ECHO in replacement of its CFA franc ahead of other ECOWAS member states. It's a matter of concern that the people with whom we wish to go into a union are taking major steps without trusting us for discussion. Nigeria fully supports and is committed to a monetary union with the right fundamentals, a union which guarantees credibility, sustainability, and overall regional prosperity and sovereignty. But we must do things properly and ensure absolute compliance with the set standards. We cannot ridicule ourselves by entering a union to disintegrate, potentially no sooner than we entered into it. We need to be clear and unequivocal about our position regarding this process. We must also communicate same to the outside world effectively. We have all staked so much in this project to leave things to mere expediencies and convenience. We must proceed with caution and comply with the agreed process of reaching our collective goal while treating each other with utmost respect. Without these, our ambitions for a strategic monetary union as an ECOWAS bloc could very well be in serious jeopardy. So I think his problem here is that by adopting the name ECHO, you're now almost speaking for the entire bloc, right? And the issue is that I think the main gripe for President Buhari, and I think the central bank governor is probably part of these tweets and there are a number of them, is that if you now adopt this and move too quickly, we're going to lose our monetary independence. That's essentially the gist of what it means to join a monetary union. So you're losing there's the European Central Bank, right? So Germany, France, all the members of the Eurozone, there's no more German central bank, and it's now just the ECB, the European Central Bank. The ECB makes all decisions for the Eurozone and controls the currency. So, I mean, you you can imagine the implications of that. If the Central Bank of Nigeria no longer has control over the currency, and we're now beholden to, a central bank for the ECO for Africa, which is essentially, or at least for our bloc. It's really supposed to be for the entire Africa, but at least for now, they're focusing on the ECOWAS bloc. You can imagine what that means, the implications. We lose our monetary independence. We no longer, control the currency, and now that is now up. And then now you are now functioning as a unit. So now what happens in other states, what happens in Senegal, what happens in Niger, what happens in Ivory Coast, what happens in Mali, it now has implications on Nigeria. Now, of course, we're the largest country in that block. So I think theoretically we dictate things the way Germany dictates a lot of things right now. By the way, I mentioned that the Eurozone wants to pass a 750 billion euro stimulus. And I even mentioned that Germany wants to pass their own stimulus as well, which is still going to be, I guess, tied to what's happening at the euro level. But there's been talk of, okay, if we pass this stimulus package, how much of it is a grant? How much of it is a loan? We don't want to just be giving free money out to countries that are being affected by COVID-19. We want to make sure they can pay it back. So the member states have to decide exactly how this money is going to be disbursed and the conditions, and they all have to agree. Yesterday, the breaking news yesterday, the New York Times got some good documents. The EU. So again, listen. Let me explain. I mean, you all know how this works, but just to further explain the point of how a bloc moves in unison. The EU. There's some talk. I mean, that they are thinking of excluding America, Russia, and Brazil. At least their citizens from traveling into their country as of July the 1st. Because those countries, they're basing it on countries that have made the most positive strides against COVID-19. So the countries that have not are a threat because cases have been climbing back up in those particular countries. And funny enough, President Trump, Vladimir Putin, and what's the Brazilian guy's name? De La Soro or Bolasoro, another populist right-wing leader. The three of them are the three. They control major economies, and all three of them were skeptical about the virus. President Trump said it was a flu, it's to go away by a miracle. Vladimir Putin ignored it. De La Soro, Bolasoro, whatever his name. Let me look up his name properly and make sure I get his name. The Brazilian president. He had a rally. He had a COVID-19, anti-COVID-19 rally in public with people, and was shaking hands, everything. Now, Jair Bolsonaro, that's it. Jair, but I don't know if the J is silent. But anyway, the point is that the EU now has to decide, all the member states have to decide if they want to exclude tourists from Russia, America, and Brazil. Now, of course, there's economic implications because a major amount of US tourists visit Europe during the summer. Summer is officially here. It's June already, and we're going into July. So back to the point I'm making about the union now. So the EU, all the states in the EU, and there'll be implications. Trump is a wild guy. If they now, in fact, by the way, he imposed a travel ban on Europe earlier. I think he excluded Scotland, or was it Ireland, and the UK. But the point being is that decisions that have to be made have to all be agreed upon by the bloc. So coming back to what President Buhari, the issues that he has with the UEMOA states wanting to move ahead and adopt the ECO and peg it to the euro, he's like, hey, look, you guys are moving too fast. Let's talk about this thing properly. Don't rush. But on the other hand, what are you waiting for? We've been talking about this ECO thing now for almost 2 years, right? Was it 3? We've been talking about, no, what am I saying? We've been talking about a unified currency now for Africa for a very long time. What am I saying? 2-3 years? For a very, very long time, decades. And what left is there to do? Now, essentially these countries are saying, look, we need to move fast. We need to get this thing gone. We need to get the African Continental Free Trade Agreement going. We got to get this unified currency for us. Is going to assist our trade, so on and so forth. But there's a lot of there's COVID-19, there's a lot of disruptions, a lot of countries have to get things in order. By the way, there were even what is it now? Conditions. There were conditions that were put forward. I think single digit inflation, your deficit not being a certain percentage of GDP, I think in single digits. What else? Inflation, I don't know if unemployment was part of it, but there were a number of conditions. Nigeria didn't meet those conditions, right? Inflation is what, 12.4 as of May. Inflation is projected to get up to 18, 19%. We got border closures that are affecting things. Our budget deficit is huge. It's increasing because we're borrowing more money in order to address our issues, or lower oil prices. So we didn't even meet the conditions anyway, right? So I think what President Buhari is doing is trying to buy more time and say, hey, look, don't rush. Isn't that a song? Wasn't that a song that was trending? Don't rush. Anyway, whatever. And so he's saying don't rush. Let's all talk about this together and let's move as one block. So that's what's going on with that. So it's very interesting seeing those tweets from the president. Still on the matter of currencies, Citibank held an investors conference yesterday with the federal government of Nigeria, in virtual, of course. It was titled COVID-19 Economic and Budgetary Update. There were, of course, representatives from the federal government that attended this conference, investors conference. They included Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance, Godwin Emefiele, CBN Governor, Patience Oniha, the Director General of the Debt Management Office, Ben Akabweze, Director General of the Budget Office, and the representative of the Minister of Health. The takeaway from this meeting, Godwin Emefiele, Central Bank Governor, is quoted as saying, we will continue to pursue a unification around the NAFEX market. The NAFEX market essentially is the INE window, investors and exporters window, where the FX rates that is used by the participants in that market is a market determined rate. So he's saying that, okay, we're going to push forward with a unified exchange. Everybody's been pushing for a unified exchange. Everybody, all you that send messages, we know we've been having this conversation over and over again. Now, interestingly enough, at the very same investors conference, Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, said that Nigeria is close to securing $3 billion World Bank facility. Remember, I believe it wanted 6.9 billion or so. 3.4 has already come from the IMF. Another 3 was supposed to come from the World Bank. No, it was 2.5 from the World Bank. Now she's saying it's 3 billion, where 1.5 billion, I believe, is for the federal government, and another 1.5 is supposed to be for state governments. In fact, let me read her quotes here. World Bank negotiations are on course, and we are looking at World Bank going to the board on the 6th of August for Nigeria's approval. They have met largely all the conditions for the facility, and she said the amount we're raising in the first instance is 1.5 billion for the federal government, and around September, October, we are hoping to close out the facility meant for states, and that's supposed to be another 1.5. So look, if you folks want to put 2 and 2 together here, if the central bank governor just happens to be coming out saying that, hey, we're going to unify the exchange rate, and then the Minister of Finance now comes out and says, oh, we're also going to be getting money from the World Bank. It kind of tells you that the World Bank probably had certain conditions, right? The IMF didn't really give us any conditions because we are tapping into the Rapid Credit Facility, the RCF, before we got the money from that 3.4 billion from them. So if you put 2 and 2 together, what has been whispers have been that the World Bank said, before we give you this 3 billion, you need to unify your exchange rate. Now, but there was a document they sent to them where they actually said, okay, this is what we're going to do. So I think that's the reason why we're seeing this language coming from the authorities. Okay, hey, there are messages.
Organo Chuko from AJ says, adopting the eco is the end of round trapping in currency markets.
That's
and
yes, sir.
Folu says, I bought shares with a certain organization over 10 years ago, but don't know where and how to follow up.
Okay. You got to just go with the registrars. You have to check who is going to be holding those. You have to go to and speak to the registrars. You can look it up. I'll take a look and I'll do the homework for you.
Thank you. Benga Komu says, have we sorted out our economic problems? And we are talking about a monetary union, I beg. This adoption of a currency won't work. And then he says, Reuters, you're talking about tourism. You think people are enthusiastic about leaving their places for others, and the Europeans are just being cautious. Trump can do anything he wants. The Europeans will match him sanction for sanction. Treating coronavirus costs money too.
You're right. He has an election of Benga, so he can't really fight too much. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Ugo from Sule says, I'm not interested in following any government official on Twitter because none of them are worth it yet. Anyway, meanwhile, Buhari never spoke on the violation of Nigerian building in the embassy in Ghana, but he's speaking on equal currency. So sad. I heard it was in the news this morning that the Ghanaian president called him to apologize personally
about the vandalization,
destruction.
Oh wow.
Cruz says, I like the way you couched it. We would lose our monetary independence. We need to think and act wisely. Let's not look for Fela's song that suggests what this is about. I what song is that?
Oh gosh. Yinka, where have you been? I can't remember that Fela song.
Yinka chatted with you. Oh no, Yinka was on Freshly Pressed. Yinka says, I'm afraid I'll have to agree with the president on whoever wrote that speech. See, these French-speaking Africans are a problem. They don't have a mind of their own. How have these francophone countries fared in years? Please, can Nigeria keep her naira?
Yinka, they have had stability by being pegged to the euro. They have had no devaluation issues. They have been, of course, currency peg is risky, right? But again, look at the Eurozone. Eurozone had its issues, but they've generally been working well. And again, this is supposed to facilitate. I mean, think about it now. If you want to travel to Senegal, you have to start converting money to CFA franc. If you had the ECHO, single currency, think you can buy stuff easily from those countries. You can travel easily. You can conduct business with them and export things to them and import things easily. So a unified currency has its advantages, but then on the other side, there are also the disadvantages as well.
MI says one of the great drivers of the eco-vision was Gaddafi. Of all the things we can say about him, he was very pro-Africa. Reuters, remember I flagged these undue influences last week.
Yes, you
so
did.
I'm not surprised that we are mentioning France in a conversation about a unitary African currency. Reuters, leave Boo Boo with tweets, Jerry. Someone has earned their pay last.
Yes, let's just check out Sean real quick.
Sean says, LOL at the president's tweet, last in Kovic.
I was saying that I didn't think the president wrote those tweets because they were so he doesn't really tweet much about the economy.
Yeah,
and he usually talks about
working.
I know he's a busy guy, so
exactly.
that's why.
All right. Okay, thank you all so much.
Hey, Darlington Abdul Rahman, I see your messages. We're running out of time, but thank you so much.
Of time, actually.
Thank you everybody for your messages.
Thanks everyone. You can join the conversation online, follow Rotan Quotes, and of course Smooth 981 FM is the hashtag Business Express 981. Next up, it will be time for Freshly Pressed 981 at 7:30. In the meanwhile, enjoy some smooth music. Smooth 98.1, love music, love life.
Business Express, brought to you.
So what is that you did to get all the messages start coming through?
I just put it on. I'm going to put it on. I just unlocked the phone.
Some may say it's not
I was talking about